We are all now in a new reality, and everyone, I think, understands this, even those who may not want to admit it yet. The recent drone incidents across Europe are a clear sign that Russia still feels bold enough to escalate this war. And it was never just about Ukraine. Russia has always aimed to break the West and Europe in particular. Today, their strategy is simple: to divide Europe, to ignite arguments, to prevent us from finding common ground. And I believe we must do the exact opposite of what Russia expects. We must act together, and we must act with strength. First, our guys are already here in Denmark, and there are experienced Ukrainians who know how to detect and shoot down attack drones, and they have already begun deploying their mission, and we are ready to share this experience with you, partners, and this is just the beginning, the first step on the path toward an effective drone wall to protect all of Europe. Please, let's work together on coordinated solutions that will make this happen. Second, when we talk about the drone wall, we are talking about all of Europe, not just on one country. If the Russians dare to launch drones against Poland or violate the airspace of northern European countries, it means this can happen anywhere. We should also support President Trump's call to stop buying Russian oil here in Europe, as short-sighted to go against the USA. And the guys from Hungary need to hear this clearly. Energy from the US and other partners can fill the gap on the European market.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's stream, whether you're joining us on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Ganjing World. And of course, special thanks, as always, to our friend Red Access for moderating the live chat and keeping the discussion flowing. This is the 26th episode of Cold War 2.0, and I'm very pleased to welcome back our friend, historian and political analyst, Dr. Tarik Cyril Amar. Together, we will be unpacking the latest developments in global geopolitics, from Europe's so-called drone wall against Russia to Putin's remarks about the decline of Europe and what all of this means for the balance of power in the emerging multipolar world. So stay with us. Today's episode is packed with analysis you won't hear in the mainstream press. Dear Tarik, how are you doing today?
Fine. How are you, Kevork?
I'm good. I would like to ask you first about the drone wall. What is the drone wall? What is it about? Zelensky mentioned it, Ursula von der Leyen mentioned it, the Danish Prime Minister, the Finnish Prime Minister. Almost everybody is talking about the drone wall. Technically speaking, what does it mean to establish a drone wall, and how can this type of a wall deter possible Russian, let's say, aerial incursions into Europe?
Well, I mean, I don't want to bore people because they probably know this already.
Please do.
But let me. I'm an academic. I'm always ready to bore people. So it's not a wall, obviously, right? The fact that we have this very unfortunate term circulating, the drone wall, is basically because there's a German running the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen. And if you remember World War II, the Germans just loved the walls, right? The Ostwall, the Westwall. It's a very Germanic phrase, the drone wall, boom. But of course, it's not a wall. What she's really talking about is what Mette Frederiksen, the leader of Denmark, has described, to be fair to her, in slightly more accurate terms, as a network. Right? It's a network of various kind of sensoring stations, not only radar, but acoustic and other devices, and then various anti-drone weapons. And the trick about such a network is to achieve some type of cost efficiency above all. Because if you remember, the the drone incident, whatever exactly happened there over Poland about a week ago, where we were treated to this very triumphalist tale, how everybody got together and they had then the jets in the air, the AWACS and blah, 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 and then they shot down these drones. Where the real story is they used multi-million-dollar missiles per piece to shoot down drones that cost maybe $10,000 to make. Right? And they know it. They sometimes even admit this, right? Rutte has admitted this. So one of these issues that's really behind this whole drone wall idea, it isn't just to be able to shoot down drones, to see them, to shoot them down, to counteract them. It's very much also a question of pure economic efficiency. Because if you keep shooting down simple drones that are basically, cost nothing in international terms, with multi-million-dollar missiles, that's of course not a good thing, and invites the other to send you drones, right? If the other wants to. The other thing, of course, is, and I think this has to be put in context, when you hear about the drone wall and the people who want it, it's usually people in the east of Europe. It's partly the Scandinavians. The Finns are really hot on it now that they've made themselves members of NATO. Brilliant move. Slow claps all around. Now they need a drone wall. The Poles love it. The Romanians apparently are into it. And of course the Balts. How could the Balts resist something that is about spending a lot of money from everyone in the EU? It's usually not their money on their paranoia. They love it, right? So here's the problem with this thing. Even the Finns say that the initial outlay for such a thing is €1 billion. You can assume that it will be much, much more. These projects never cost what they estimate at the beginning. It's usually multiples. But on top of that, you have to consider that the whole drone wall gig, the whole drone wall spiel, is part of a much larger drive. And this larger drive aims all the time at hundreds of billions of euros to be pumped into defense. And of course, there are knock-on effects, and these people know this very well. When you challenge them and you say, look, even if we build all these sensors and if we come up with these defense systems against these drones, it will never be perfect. They admit that. If you corner them, Macron has admitted it, the Poles have admitted it, but they still say, but we need it. And that means the next step is going to be, now that the drone wall is perfect, here's the next thing we need to buy. So this is part of a very large game for a lot of money. That's what the drone wall is most of all.
I want to make a sarcastic comment about this, because you said after building this so-called wall, they will come with a new idea, and this reminds me of the corona vaccines, when the people have taken it and then they said, now you need a booster, and now you need another booster, and the list goes on. And by the way, please continue.
No. You go.
Because you mentioned the challenges, right? And this is also an article published in Bloomberg. I want to screen this article for our audience. So this article, basically, the title says, "Lacking air defense, Europe races to catch up in drone war." And I would like to just a little bit summarize what this Bloomberg article says. And it says that this discussion shows how Europe is scrambling to respond to the growing threats of drones, particularly after the alleged repeated Russian incursions. The EU has pledged billions of euros, partly from frozen Russian assets, to form a so-called drone alliance with Ukraine. Kiev's battlefield experience is seen as invaluable, but European leaders are struggling with coordination, funding, and technological speed. NATO's use of expensive missiles against cheap Russian decoy drones exposed how unprepared Europe is. Ursula von der Leyen's promise of a so-called drone war sounds ambitious, but insiders dismiss it as more of a PR slogan than a practical strategy. Germany warns that even with massive defense spending, real solutions are years away, and bureaucratic slowness means today's technology is already outdated. Meanwhile, Europe still depends almost entirely on US long-range defenses, just as Trump pressures it to stand on its own. So in short, Europe is rushing to militarize its skies against drones, but political divisions, lack of money, and slow industry leave it dangerously exposed. So the question here is, dear Tarik, if Europe is already years behind in air defense and admits it can't even stop cheap Russian decoy drones, how serious, or sorry to say, how ridiculous is Ursula von der Leyen's promise of a drone wall? Is this really a strategy to protect Europeans, or just an empty PR slogan to mask continued dependence on Washington?
I think it's a lot of things, and all of them are very bad. One thing it's a power grab and a money grab by the European Commission. And when you look at what happened now at that big meeting in Copenhagen, where they were all coming together, 44 European nations, to talk about, among other things, the drone wall project, what really came out of this is that a lot of states are not happy with Ursula von der Leyen's approach, because what she's really trying to do is to say, first of all, we need this drone wall, and secondly, it's me, the Commission, the EU, we do this, and we want the money, and we want to spend the money. And at least the bigger states in the European Union, by the way, including the French and the Germans, are reacting in, for once, a normal manner, and are saying, listen, actually, our defense is a national thing. And if we want to buy something or build something against drones, which in itself, may be a reasonable idea, we need to do that at home. We don't want to empower you, Ursula, once again, to just pour away billions of money, because that's exactly what she wants to do. Now, the next thing is, of course, think about who is being glorified as actually being ahead in drones this side of Russia. It's the Ukrainians. The Europeans right now are building armament factories. There are at least 5 being planned by the Germans alone, in Ukraine, right? We will see how far they get, because the Russians are going to probably bomb them. But hey, let them try. You see a common development of armament industry and common profiteering now. And of course, what would happen is that a lot of these billions would flow into super corrupt Ukraine, so that the great drone masters from Ukraine can sell us their great drones and their great drone knowledge, right? I mean, that is part of the meaning of this silly little sales shtick that we've just heard from Zelensky, where he says, our people are already here, drone experts that can help you. All that makes me think is, you know what, Volodymyr? I think your people are there, and they probably have started the drones. Yes, thank you very much. That's what I was thinking all the time. What a sales pitch. And then the other thing it's supposed to do, of course, is, in general, once again, it's a part of a larger mosaic of pumping enormous amounts of money into European armaments industries, which, when you look at how European industry is evolving, how it's evolving, how Europe is being deindustrialized through its own fault. What's actually booming is armament. It's not cars, it's not IT, which we hardly have any. It's not even chemical industries, which used to be running very well. No, what's booming now is armaments industries. So that's the big game everyone wants to be into and pump money into. Public money that ultimately comes from the taxpayer. And let me repeat, this whole idea that they can use the frozen Russian assets to do this, right? First of all, the Belgians, where this money actually is legally, it's in Belgium, are still not happy for very good reasons. They don't actually want to go along. Many others aren't happy because they know it's totally illegal. And if they do it, it will massively damage the euro as a reserve currency. And it has hardly developed yet as a reserve currency. And the next thing is the scheme that they're really thinking about. It's always called some sort of confiscation, and that's what the Russians call it. And in a way it is, but technically it's actually something else. It's even worse. It's a way to use the Russian frozen assets, these 200 billion or so that are in Europe, as collateral for this enormous interest-free so-called loan to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And the next step is supposed to be, I think we've talked about this before, but let's repeat it because nobody else explains this. The next step is supposed to be that Ukraine wins the war. And then the Russians have to pay reparations, and that's going to pay off the loan. That none of this will ever happen. And you know who is the next in line after that if this never happens? The European taxpayer. Literally, it's already, they are already planning this. So they're making this false promise, which is, oh, you don't have to pay because we get the Russians to pay, which they will never do because they win the war. And they already know that they can only float the whole thing if they also promise that, well, in the worst case, if that doesn't work, our taxpayers are going to pay the bill once again for Ukraine, obviously.
Are you promising us more taxes here in Germany, Tarik?
Well, I mean, the economy is, as you know, the economy is running white hot, right? So why not a few more taxes to take out the rest of it?
Since you mentioned the industry, this is basically the German auto industry to eliminate nearly 100,000 jobs by 2030. This is by Bloomberg. Volkswagen,
sorry. It is.
Volkswagen, I think this is an automobile something, paring back production, and Robert Bosch GmbH slashing 13,000 jobs, shows how the German auto industry's decline is rippling through Europe's biggest economy. Today I was reading an article, I think in the Spiegel, says this is what Putin's war in Ukraine has cost us in Germany.
No, this isn't what Putin's war has cost Germany. This is what German political decisions have cost Germany. The decision to become an indirect participant in the war, which we didn't have to do, and the decision not to take energy from Russia anymore, which is the only inexpensive source we had, and the decision not to mind when our so-called Ukrainian allies, who we are feeding with hundreds of billions, blow up our gas pipelines, most likely together with the Brits, the Americans, the Poles, and maybe the Norwegians on top of it. Those decisions are ruining Germany. But the Spiegel would, of course, never tell it to you. The Spiegel would say, Putin. These guys are getting ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
But Zelensky said this. I just want to remind our audience about this, and this is, I think, very important when it comes to the sources of the energy in Europe itself.
We should also support President Trump's call to stop buying Russian oil here or in Europe. It's short-sighted to go against the USA. And the guys really need to hear this clearly. Energy from the US and other partners can fill the gap on the European market.
So the United States can fill the gap in the European market.
Just at a ruinously high price. That's all, right? That doesn't matter. We've got the money, don't we? We just pay much, much more. And this is why industry is no longer competitive. And we'll stay on that track as long as we don't solve that problem. And Zelensky doesn't care because Zelensky hasn't had a normal economy for years. The economy of Ukraine is like the economy of Israel. It's a thing that only works because others pump money into it all the bloody time. So Zelensky doesn't understand these ordinary problems that we have. All Zelensky needs to know is that we pay. That's all he needs to know. That's his economy. That's how Ukraine makes its money. Literally, the Ukrainian state, not just the arms, not just the army, the state is being paid for by abroad, by the West. The state, the budget, the fact that the thing isn't just collapsing, that's all coming from outside.
Yeah, but there is in the rhetoric, in the language, like the disrespect, let's say, to Orban in this case.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
the guy from Hungary. I mean, at least this guy is elected. He is not.
No, I mean it's incredible, and of course Orban, whether Zelensky likes this or not, Orban is actually the head of a country that is a member. Ukraine is not a member of the EU, right? Zelensky doesn't understand that there's
or NATO.
Or NATO. They're a member of nothing except They are attached to everything to get more money so that they can run this enormous slaughterhouse in which they destroy their own population. That's the Zelensky regime. That's the Zelensky regime, right? So I wouldn't expect anything from these guys. Obviously not. Obviously not.
There is this awkward video published today or yesterday by of Orban and the Prime Minister of.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Prime Minister.
Sorry. Why do you?
Prime Minister Orban.
Victor, they will.
Sorry. Can I ask a question?
They will picture together.
Who's the main threat against Europe right now? No, it's a real question. Please, Prime Minister.
The real danger, economic stagnation and losing competitiveness. This is the danger.
Not Russia?
Sorry, not Russia. No. We are stronger than guys. So we are stronger than Russia. Make some comparison and base your opinion on the facts. So we have more than 400 million people. Yeah, Russia is 130 something. Look at the European GDP. Is like that. Russia is like that. We spend altogether 27 more on military spending than the Russians. So why we are afraid? We are stronger than they are. The question is whether we have. I love him when he used my argument whether we have leadership to come together and to defend our interests together. That's what we should do anyway.
What really struck me here are the journalists who should ask the critical question here, and they want him to say the word Russia.
Yeah,
Russia is.
Of course. No, I think it's even worse. They want to expose him for not saying Russia. You know, they want to show what a bad person he is because he doesn't obey the normal consensus and says Russia, right? Our biggest problem is always Russia or Putin personally. This is all nonsense. And, you know, I'm extremely critical of Orban in many ways. I hate the way he has positioned Hungary towards Palestine and the Gaza genocide. He's one of the worst, right? And I won't not mention that. But in terms of how he relates to the real challenges that Europe faces when it comes to where are we between Russia and the US, because that's also in the background. Orban is one of the only basically reasonable people in the room there. He really is. He really is. And to be honest, he gave a fairly diplomatic answer by saying, you know, economic stagnation and this and that. He could have said the biggest danger to Europe is actually the US. And I think that's objectively true. The biggest danger to Europe is the US because they're bleeding us
Trump
dry.
is his friend. That's why he's not telling it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. Again, that would be very impolite of him. But so I don't have to because I'm not Trump's man. I mean, it's not mine. Bad luck for you, Donald. So here's the thing. Who's bleeding us dry? On one side, Ukraine. On the other side, the Americans with their tariff policy, with their economic policy. And that started under Biden with legislation that was really aimed at sucking our industry, what we have left out of Europe. And they're still doing it. And they're still doing it. They have an extremely instrumental relationship to us, the Europeans. They see us as a resource that they can use up. And if we are not careful, we are going to be the next proxy war theater for them. And our task then will be to use up Russian energy while they deal with China. That's one possible scenario here. And the people who don't see this, how the Americans are getting ready to use us, they must be completely blind. Our biggest threat is the Americans and their foreign policy.
Tarik, you mentioned Israel and Hungary's position on Gaza. This was not part of our discussion, but you're the most, I would say, the way you express your opinions benefits us all. I'm being serious here. And I really want to know your opinion about how do we contextualize and what language we should use about the attack yesterday in Manchester, which is linked to the Israel-Palestine conflict, right? There was a person of Syrian descent. They claim that this was an Islamic-motivated attack, let's say, against Jewish people, and he murdered a few of them. I'm not sure about the number of the casualties. Of course, this is a terrorist attack against Jewish people who are practicing their prayers. But I'm seeing a lot of polarization about this case. Now, there is the talk that this is definitely, let's say, a terrorist attack motivated by religion. And there is no talk at all about there was no talk about what's going on in Gaza. How we as people who are humanitarian and we want for the Jewish people and for the Muslim people not to be killed, let's say, to position ourselves from such attacks, especially when if or when the attack has an anti-Semitic background.
Look, let me add one detail. This detail, I'm just adding it because it's part of the facts around this particular incident. And it doesn't make a difference to the questions you've asked and the problems you describe. But it seems to be the case that two of the people who were shot were actually shot by British police. And one of them actually died because of being shot by British police. And obviously, I'm not saying this to somehow relativize what the attacker did, right? So just to be clear, but just to lay out the whole situation even a little more. Speaking about the attack and the attacker, yes, it's a terrorist attack, obviously. It's murder, right? It's a very heinous type of murder. Murder is always terrible, but, you know, to walk into someone's holy day during prayer and commit murder, there's something especially revolting about this. I think we would all agree. But I'm uncomfortable, to be honest, with framing it as how should we speak about it? Because
Yes.
I understand your question, you're right. But in general, I'm uncomfortable because we have had too much of this. This is a matter of individual conscience. And I hope that everybody has enough of an individual conscience to know what ways of speaking about this are maybe appropriate and what ways are certainly inappropriate, right? That's people need to know this themselves, frankly, right? But we need to stop thinking that we all need to respond in the same way in the first place, right? I can see things that we all can agree on are wrong. If somebody were to react by glee, by joy, right, to this murder, that we all understand if we are saying that this is wrong, right? But once we see it in the context of the genocide that is happening in Gaza, there, I think it gets much more complicated because it simply is, not because I don't want to give an answer. This is actually complex. Because consider, for instance, some reactions that I've seen. Some people have said very clearly this is a terrorist attack, it's murder. But it also is a scandal that on the same day, Israel killed at least 57 Palestinians and nobody mentions it. Right? And there is something about the way in which, and we've seen this in other situations, certain lives really matter for us, and they should. The problem is elsewhere, that certain other lives don't matter. That's where the problem is, right? So we are invited to project our revulsion, our sadness, whatever it is, over these victims, right, of this terrorist attack, and understand that. But it is still perfectly legitimate to also say, where is our revulsion and sadness over the immensely larger number of mass murder, genocide victims in Gaza? That has nothing to do with an untoward comparison. That is a very fair question to ask. And when somebody wants to try to forbid that question, I get very suspicious, because then I feel that person wants to instrumentalize the victims of the terror attack, which, by the way, is also disrespect, right? Which is also disrespect in a political game, right? And I would never go along with that. Absolutely not.
You know what also makes me suspicious, Tarik? I'm sorry that we're going a little bit out of our schedule today. That is, in my opinion, there have been people during the refugee crisis came here from my country, and those people, for example, support Jolani, right? And in no way or shape I could understand or I would, in no way or shape, I would believe that these people could integrate into any European society. Like, in my opinion, they are also Zionists from the Arabic countries, very, very discriminatory and racist, even against myself, because I was born as a Christian, ethnic Armenian, and such things usually even happening, let's say, online. Like, there is a tolerance towards people saying or expressing opinions, for example, of committing crimes. Like, people were one video after another, they were vowing to execute me and kill me in the streets and strangle over my neck and execute me and hang me and all this stuff live on video. And these people live here in Germany, and nothing happens to these people. And then when we tolerate, this is like an incitement against murder, and I'm not trying to limit speech, right? Incitement against murder. And when the police, whether in Germany or in the UK, in my opinion, there is a politicization, basically, of legal prosecution, like coming after people who oppose genocide in Gaza.
Yes.
But if and detaining them under the Terrorism Act. Meanwhile, when people literally saying we will execute you, no, but nothing happens to them, right? Like, there is a serious issue with coming after this radical scene, as if they want for these people to commit certain lone wolf attacks, for example, so that they would impose certain measures against their own people. And now we see all the calls: deport all the Muslims from the UK. This is the first thing that I saw today many, many times. Social speech, limits speech on social media, and freedom of expression. So many things are coming into the package after this type of attacks. That's what. So it seems to me that there is a political side of it, allow these people to like multiply and commit such crimes and capitalize on it for political and security gains, for the sake of limiting speech and introducing new laws and probably digital IDs now. They will definitely try to tie it to digital IDs now.
You know, the inconsistencies that you point out, right? That on a larger scale, that we, the West, are shaking hands now with Giuliani, who is an Al-Qaeda terrorist. That's who he really is, right? He's just one. That's it. That's the difference. And the fact that we also, of course, and here we are right, condemn individual terrorist attacks. The inconsistency is glaring. And the other inconsistency, which is between going after, say, Palestine Action people, or people who just dare to support Palestine Action with words, as if they were terrorists, right? While again, working with Al-Jolani, and the Brits are among the worst, right? All of this is absolutely true. And in a way, what happens is that you can only pity the individual victims of a terrorist attack even more, because they become the victims not of just one terrorist, one criminal. They become the victims of a whole system of lying. And whether that system is totally deliberate or whether it's sort of making it up as they go along from one fiasco and mistake to the other, and then opportunistically profiting from what they're doing, I don't even know. I don't even know. But it is certainly terrible, right? It's clear that something is very, very amiss. Let me give you one example from history. I don't want to bore anybody, but let me be a historian for a moment.
I will continue saying it, please. I love the
there has been among historians of the Soviet Union, there has been a long debate, and it's never been concluded, whether in 1934 Stalin has a certain man assassinated, a certain very important party cadre called Kirov, or not. And the people who say it was Stalin say it was a false flag. That's what we would call it now. He had him assassinated so he could start an escalation of his own political purging, right? And the other side says, no, it actually wasn't a false flag. It's very strange what happened. Tons of incongruities, but actually it wasn't a planned operation. But once it happened, Stalin milked it for everything he could get out of it. And that's a little bit how I feel about the problem we are seeing here too. it doesn't even always matter whether it's a conspiracy or a plan.
Yes.
What matters is the ruthless exploitation of these things once they happen, right? That's even worse, I would
True.
say. And that we always see. That
Yes.
you don't have to prove. That's out in the open.
So true. By the way, guys, as you can see on the screen, I'm scrolling our dear friend Tarik's special offer. If you subscribe to Tarik's Substack, and you will receive 20% off your new annual subscriptions, and this is valid 2 days from now. The link is scrolling on the screen, and it's also in the description below. You can simply click it and read his work on Substack. It's important to always support independent thinkers and historians like Tarik himself. I would like Tarik to go back a little bit back to the drone issue in Europe, and this time Putin made a statement about this case. He was asked about the drone incursions or the alleged drone incursions, and this is what he said.
В Данию столько дронов посылаете. Им
Не
там
буду больше.
неуютно. Да, не надо больше.
Больше не буду.
Вот.
Не буду больше ни во Францию, ни в Данию, ни в Копенгаген. Куда еще долетают? На это
Да
самое, там,
везде долетают.
да, в Лиссабон. Куда? И, знаете, там развлекаются люди, которые когда-то развлекались по поводу неопознанных летающих объектов, НЛО. Но там столько чудаков, как и у нас, кстати говоря. Ничем не отличается, особенно молодые люди. Там они сейчас будут запускать вам каждый день. Каждый день, боже мой. Вот и пусть ловят все это. Значит, но, как вы понимаете, если серьезно, у нас и дронов-то нет, которые до Лиссабона долетают.
We don't even have drone switching. But he made a sarcastic comment here. And I think, this is my opinion, that yes, the question was sarcastic, but this was also an opportunity maybe to speak to the European people, trying to explain to them the intentions of Russia in this case, right? Because now the mainstream press in Europe will use this as, to interpret it and distort the meaning behind it.
Yeah. Look, the thing is, right, I don't know if Putin cares, frankly. He probably doesn't. But if there was an intention to expose the ridiculous nature of our drone hysteria, right, that we are supposed to be in, that's what our governments want from us in our mainstream media, by a sarcastic little comment, it probably won't work, because you have to know Russian. Because in Russian, it's extremely funny. Because those two, they're basically doing the role play, strict teacher, bad pupil. And it's like, well, it's really going on. It's like, are you going to stop now? And Putin's like, yeah, I won't do it anymore. And the other guy's, yeah, it's time to stop now. So here's the thing, right? The drone story that we are being told in the West does really not add up. Really does add up. There are so many points about it that are very strange. One is the drones that allegedly came from Russia and flew into Poland can't really fly from Russia into Poland. They don't have a range like that. There's a possibility that the Ukrainians used old drones that the Russians that they had brought down and then sent them on to Poland to cause panic, for instance. And if people are still naive, Ukraine is perfectly capable of all of this.
If not Ukraine, the UK. If not,
usually together. That's the type of operation that the GRU, the Ukrainian military intelligence, GUR, and the MI6 would totally be into together. And I mean, Kit Klarenberg has done research on people in the UK who've been thinking exactly about this stuff. Exactly. And some of this they've been doing online. So it actually came out. It's really not hard to imagine. This is not conspiracy theory. This may very well be conspiracy practice. I can't prove it. I don't know it, but it's definitely a possibility. The other thing is that when you hear the arguments of the people who say we can't prove it's Russian, but we think so, right? Because they in the end, they all admit that they can't prove it. They say things like, well, the flight patterns of some of these drones are such that they must be spying on our installations. And as people have pointed out, you know what? They have satellites. They don't need to fly drones over your installations. A lot of this stuff is on Google Maps. I'm sorry. This is ridiculous stuff. Then the idea that they're flying these drones with all their lights on, right? I mean, yeah, allegedly they want to terrorize us that way. Whatever. You have also probably heard that the French actually seized a tanker for a day or two. And one of the stories that they were telling was that they think that the tanker somehow was involved, apparently as a launching platform or something, in the drone incidents in Denmark. We don't hear about this anymore because it's a total flop. Nothing has worked. So now they're very quiet. The tanker's on its way. Nobody got arrested because they have nothing. So this whole thing where our governments and our media once again tell us, we don't really have a proof, but you don't need a proof because we are telling you, think of Nord Stream. Think of Nord Stream. They were telling us the same thing about Nord Stream, that it was the Russians, although it made absolutely no sense. And it took ages until they stopped. And then think about how useful this war hysteria is for them right now. I mean, really, this is a cui bono. Who is it useful to problem, in my view?
I think always we need to try to check who benefits from these incidences. And if you are Russia, you should be, if you're doing it, you should be smarter in this case of sending drones which are not achieving any military goals except for creating the
mobilizing your opponents.
Yes, mobilizing your opponents, basically.
Yeah. It's like, look, but here I have to say one more thing, right? There is an article today, I think in Bloomberg or FT, I forgot. And it's all about why Denmark. And so they're asking the questions, why do these drones or some of them turn up in Denmark? And their answer is, because Denmark is so special in that it supports Ukraine so much, which is actually true. When you look at the way they spend on Ukraine per head of population, per GDP, it's totally insane. If my government did that, I would definitely vote them out of office. I mean, basically, to give you a flavor, you know, basically Mette Frederiksen traveled to Kiev one day and Zelensky said, you know what, we have a whole city seriously war damaged called Mykolaiv. Do you want to take over rebuilding it? And she said, yes. That's what they're doing now. The Danish-Ukrainian relationship is completely insane. And I'm intrigued. You know, if I were Ukraine and I wanted to start provocations, one place I would do it is Denmark, because I would know that the Danish government would do everything to tell my story. And even if they knew it wasn't true, they would never uncover me. I'm sorry, but I have to say one thing. When I saw this story, why Denmark, there was one factor I didn't see.
Why is it Denmark? Could you explain to us?
I don't know, but there's one factor that I think should be discussed. I mean, find somebody who looks at you the way Mette Frederiksen looks at Zelensky. No, I'm serious. Pay attention. I mean, I don't know what that is, but that is deep fascination. Let's put it like that.
Her name is Mette Frederiksen.
Yes.
And she was elected recently, right, in the position, and she's relatively new.
She has always been completely gung-ho about Ukraine. And I do think there's a personal factor. I think she is incredibly smitten, right? I'm not saying they're a couple, but she's smitten in some way by Zelensky. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm checking some of the photos now. Since you mentioned,
I mean,
some of the photos, looks the personal relationship between them is over the roof, and it's like sitting in a fighter jet together.
Yeah, like, that's what I do. That's what I do. That's my chat up line. Do you want to sit in a fighter jet with me? I
mean, he's trying to impress. You know. oh my God! I think what was her name? Olena Zelenskaya, the wife of Zelensky, has to be a little bit careful about this situation. Let's spread this rumor on Syriana analysis, and it goes viral.
Don't tell Candace Owens; she's gonna run with it.
Oh my God! Don't give her such a story, please. By the way, when I watched the speech of Putin yesterday, one thing also caught my attention when he spoke about the possible, or as he mentions, the decay in Europe. I would like to play this video because there is something that I would like to ask you.
И дело даже не в том, что в экономике, в локомотиве европейской экономики, в Германии мы наблюдаем стагнацию уже не первый год, и на следующий год вроде тоже стагнация намечается. И дело не в том, что французская экономика сталкивается с огромными проблемами, с дефицитом бюджета и с растущим долгом. А дело в том, что вот эти фундаментальные вещи, связанные с идентичностью европейской, исчезают. Вот в чем все дело. Размыв такой происходит изнутри. Неконтролируемая миграция разъедает его изнутри. И я сейчас не буду вдаваться, вам это лучше известно, чем мне. Европа должна быть чем-то квазигосударственным образованием, или это Европа нации, Европа самостоятельное государство. Это не наше дело, это внутриевропейская дискуссия. Но все равно так или иначе базис-то такой ценностный должен оставаться. Если его нет, если он исчезает, то тогда и Европа, которую мы так все любили, она исчезает. Знаете, у нас ведь много очень либеральной публики в России. Из такой творческой среды, из интеллектуальной среды. И очень много есть, ну, как у нас любят говорить, есть такое понятие западники. То есть те люди, которые вот склонны и ближе считают, что Россия должна быть к Западу. Но даже они, вот в контакте со мной говорят, Европа, которую мы так любили, ее больше нет. Вот это я сейчас не буду фамилии называть, они очень известные люди в нашей стране. Реально, это европейские интеллектуалы в полном прямом смысле этого слова, поверьте мне. Они и живут там полгода в Европе. Вот они говорят, все, Европа, которую мы так любили, и которой так дорожим, ее больше нет. Значит, вот, а это что прежде всего? Это вот размывание вот этих ценностных ориентиров и фундамента ценностного. Если это будет дальше происходить, то, конечно, я сказал, что это затухающий центр, он так и будет постепенно скукоживаться и затухать.
Tarik, what caught my attention in this statement is Putin is a smart man and the words he uses all calculated. And it seems to me that he is trying to reach out to more what is called the conservative parties in Europe. Like he's also echoing their talking points. Not that he is wrong. In some of the countries, yes, there's lots of troubles, social troubles and burdens because of the unlimited, let's say, open borders or whatever the people are arguing here. But in the past, let's say a few decades ago, under the Soviet Union, it was the Soviet Union trying to reach more the progressive left-wing scene. Now it looks like Russia is trying to reach more and connect more with the conservative scene in Europe, as if they share the same values, let's say, right? The people in the MAGA camp, and now with the AfD, with the Viktor Orban, with Fico. Yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
it's a state policy, basically.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, look, I would add two things, right? The first one, and again, I'm not saying this to be nice to Putin or Russia or something, but it's what I really think. It's not purely instrumental. Whatever you think about this conservative mindset that is displayed here, that's actually genuine, right? Putin actually has a psyche. He actually has a mind, right? This idea that sometimes people in the West have tried to spread that Putin basically is empty. He's just this power calculating machine. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Nothing. Putin has ideas. He has aims. He has very succinct views of the world, and they're very important to understanding him. And people who want to ignore that, they will never understand what he's up to, right? For one thing, practical terms. You can agree with these Putinist ways of seeing the world or not. That's a totally different issue. But there is a very serious, substantial core of sincerely held beliefs in this person, as in many others. That's not so unusual, right? And the conservatism with him is a key component. He is a conservative. He is a natural, I would call him a natural conservative. He loves Stolypin, who is like a conservative myth. He admires Peter the Great, who was a modernizer, but also a statist, right? And a developer, but not in a what we would call progressive or left sense. He has very conservative philosophers that he publicly quotes from, not Dugin. Everybody thinks it's Dugin. So
You never
Putin
mentioned
is-
Dugin. It's
Hardly
fine.
ever, if ever. No, Putin is genuinely, to understand him, it's not really hard. It's not hard, and he's not hiding it, and it's not a trick. He's a conservative, right? He's not a neoliberal, like many conservatives in the West have been perverted into neoliberals. That's not at all his shtick, right? He's also conservative with the economy, but he's not a neoliberal. It's a different type of conservatism. So that's a genuine aspect. And the other thing I would say is the reaching out to similarly minded people in Europe and in the USA and in other places as well, in India and China, I think, in many ways, right? You're right that the Soviet Union tried to use left-wing ideology as a relay, right? As an asset. And that's definitely not the case here. But it escapes to an extent, not entirely, but to an extent, it also escapes left and right by now. Because, I mean, think of a case like the BSW in Germany. It's just the one that comes to mind. When you look at their positions in terms of education, culture, the importance of culture, making it accessible, even migration. The BSW is very clear of being against uncontrolled migration, right? That's a left-wing force because the part of the policies of BSW that have to do with social policy, economic policy, but are basically left-wing, right? But the cultural policy, the migration policy is center and right? So I'm using that as an example to say the possibilities of this Putin way of thinking to connect to ways of thinking in the West, let's say in Europe in this case, they're even beyond the right. Although I would agree with you, there is something special about the AfD, there's something special about the Rassemblement National, there may to an extent be something special about Farage's people, Reform UK. I mean, in the speech he gave before he sits on that podium and talks and is in that discussion, the speech he gives, one thing he mentions that in some European countries, they're even trying to forbid the opposition now. And I think he means the AfD, right? So there's something there. But let me add one point before I'm misunderstood. I consider all of this normal. I consider all of this perfectly normal. We in the West have the habit of constantly identifying with political forces in other countries. We don't even feel it anymore, right? We find it totally normal that here are our favorites in Iran, here are our favorites in Russia, here are our favorites in China. These are the people we like there. No. And when we see that a Russian articulates a similar thing where he says things where we think, oh, that aligns with our people here at home. Yeah, so what? So what?
Yeah.
That as such has nothing to do with subversion or all of these horror tales that we're being told, right?
Yes.
It's a very different thing.
I also noticed that Russia recently started attracting Europeans, especially Germans, to resettle in Russia, telling them if you're escaping the neoliberal lifestyle in Europe, come, we grant you a visa, you can resettle here, we help you to restart your life, we teach you Russian. I mean, so many people applied, and
it's there.
They're posting videos after videos on X showing newly resettled European families because they want to enjoy a family lifestyle in or a family-oriented environment in Russia instead of let's say, an environment that is not so friendly toward the families when it comes to the taxation. I mean, it's serious. There is not much encouragement for the people to form a family, whether economically or socially. In the contrary, there is like discouragement for the people to form a family.
Kevork, how can you say that? All you have to be is one of the upper 1%. Just be
Yes.
really rich and you can have kids. It's fine.
I'm trying to ascend the ladder of the social class, but it seems that they have a grip over everything, Tarik.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Look, I mean, if we go away for a moment from what Putin and Russians may think, right? I mean, the underlying problem, which you are alluding to now, which is that the European governments that we are dealing with now, people like Macron, I would say people like Merz very much as well, people like Starmer. I don't think it's strange that so large parts of the population are highly disillusioned. And it is not Russia's fault. It is not Russia's fault that so many states in the West have left their own populations, of very large shares of them, high and dry, in the lurch. Fend for yourself. We don't care. This is not Russia's fault. Russia didn't do this to us. We did this to us. This is an extreme case of being infected by neoliberal insanity. Neoliberal insanity. You know, as a historian of the Soviet Union, I often think, look, I study a case of a very powerful state that obstinately pursued an ideology that killed it. Right? And there may have been better variants of that ideology. As you know, I myself am very much on the left, but I can tell you that the Soviet variant of communism did kill it, among other things, because of the way that it looked at the economy. It did. And then I look at the West and I'm like, since the 70s or 80s, we are on a similar trajectory. We have adopted neoliberalism dogmatically. We should never have adopted it at all. But not only have we adopted it, we've turned it into a damn religion. And see what it has done to our societies. I mean, not just in Europe. The US is probably the worst case in the world, right? Yes. And that's not Russia's fault. It's not Russia's fault.
No. We need to create a drone wall, dear Tarik. We need to spend more on the drone wall instead of relieving some of the taxes on the people. The groceries have increased 36% since 2020 in Germany, and the salaries are the same, which means the value of your salary has dropped 36%. And if the people don't see that problematic, I think we need to discuss that again later on a different stream. Jody, thank you so much. Thank you, Kevork and Tarik, for the topics and insight you both cover. You are both appreciated. We also appreciate you all, those who are watching this stream on YouTube, on Rumble, or in Ganjing World today. Hundreds of you have watched this live. We really appreciate every single one of you guys. And of course, we appreciate our dear friend, Dr. Tarik Cyril Amar, whose insights are always not only welcome, but educational for all of us. So we always look forward for every Friday. We do this every Friday, guys, at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Tarik's Substack is in the description below. So, and additionally, if you like this conversation and you found value in this conversation, the easy thing to do before leaving this conversation, to hit the like button, thumbs up, subscribe to Syriana Analysis. And if you like to do more to support the independent work I'm doing on this channel, you can become a patron by visiting the link on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, or simply use your smartphone and scan the QR code on the right or the left side of the screen. I'm not sure where is it at the current moment. So I wish you peace. Peace be upon you, upon your families, and we will see you again next Friday, me and dear Tarik, and I myself will see you on Monday. So thank you so much for all of you, and thank you to our moderator, Red Access, for the moderation of the live chat. Salam.
Bye-bye.